Well, thank you for joining me once again, Tom. Remind everybody who you are and what you're about.
Well, thanks, Andy, for having me on your show again. This is I'm very honored to be on the show, and I love your podcast. I always tell people to check your podcast out. I love the content, and you're doing great things. So,
Amen. I appreciate that.
So thanks for what you do. So I'm Tom Eston. I'm the host of a podcast called the Shared Security Show, and we've been podcasting for over 11 years now. So
that's outstanding.
Yeah, it's been fun over the years. So that's my kind of thing I do on the side of my own time. But my full-time job, I'm the application security practice director at a company called Bishop Fox. So that's my day job.
Very cool. And it sounds, very technical and very like secret squirrel stuff too. So,
well, it's fun. I'm a practice director over a practice that has really ethical hackers, right? And that's what we do is clients hire us to break into their applications and test their security. So it's a fun job.
Right. And I imagine you probably have a hard time explaining to people, oh, yeah, I break into corporations and stuff, and they pay us to do it. And I'm sure you've gotten some weird looks at parties before.
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah. But the thing is that what we do is it's legal, right? Mm-hmm. So we actually have authorization to do what we do. Because if you don't, I'll just say that, no one looks good in an orange jumpsuit.
So no, nobody does. Nobody does. So today we're kind of talking about some things in your wheelhouse. I wanted to pick your brain about privacy. And of course, online privacy has always been something that I've been concerned about. But my son one time was having a virtual class, and his teacher who would come on, who was teaching them coding, by the way, she was talking about what it means to be a good digital citizen. And in the process of telling them, the basic do's and don'ts, which I was very happy she was doing, she made the comment almost offhanded, because everything that you click online is going to be monitored by somebody. So let's kind of start there. Who are these somebodies that are watching us online?
Well, I would say that, monitored kind of leads me into like surveillance, right?
Mm-hmm.
To think of surveillance. So obviously we know about, the NSA and the government. I mean, sure, if they want to, they absolutely could find a way
they
to kill you. And we know that. But I like to rephrase that and think of it more as like being tracked, right? So how are you and your activities being tracked online? And I think it makes me think of like a digital footprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think hopefully you and your listeners, you've heard of that term,
right?
Everywhere you go on the web, you visit a site, you use a mobile app, all of these things, you leave footprints of your IP address, your location, your username, your email address, all of these things. And what's interesting is that all of that information can be correlated by third parties because you're sending out cookies, you're sending information about what type of browser you use, and all of these things are correlated and collected by these third parties, which essentially use this to send you more ads or to send that information to a service you use, like say Facebook, to serve you more ads or to find a way to make money off of you. So all these fingerprints and things like that, they're not necessarily about, there's evil people that are, going to use this information for bad things, but it really comes down to money and advertising, because that's really what is driving the internet and all the sites and services that we use.
Right. And so, like when we sign up for a new service and things like that, we kind of are giving up some of our privacy in that process to get that new service, right?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you've heard the term that you are the product when it comes to social media, right? Google, Facebook, all these big tech companies, I mean, they make money off of your data. So while they may not necessarily take your data and sell it to a third party, and I know like Facebook has been caught doing that in the past. You remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal a couple of years ago. But what they are doing is they're taking your information and then they're tailoring those ads to you. So, if you're on Facebook or any social media site, you're going to see things pop up. You're like, wow, that's weird. Like I was just thinking about that.
Right.
Or,
so
you
So,
know,
so my
weird.
phone isn't actually listening to me. It's just gathering all the information that I give to it and spitting it
Yes.
back at me. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Everything from your Google searches to, it's interesting. People say, like, yeah, I was putting something in my shopping cart in Amazon. And then the next thing I know, it shows that product or a product like that shows up on Instagram in my feed. Like,
Right.
that's so weird. But it's really not when you think about how, those sites and services use things like tracking cookies and other types of indicators that link in to these social networks. And because you're signing up with a terms of service, you're agreeing to allow third parties access to this data, which is sometimes surprising. People don't understand that. Well, I would never allow Facebook to do those things. Well,
Sure.
you agreed to it if you sign up to use that service. It can be shocking and surprising.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are shocked and surprised when they find out exactly, how many pieces of information are going over to these third party companies. So can you kind of give us an idea? We say third party.
Yeah.
What's a third party company?
So think of it this way as like marketing and analytics companies. These are all, uh, there's a whole industry around data collection of internet, people that use the internet. And they will take that information. So a lot of times it's about, creating demographics of people. Companies will hire a third party marketing company to say, I need to know all the males in this age group that like this Netflix show, for example. And then they will take that and correlate that data and sell that to a company like Facebook or some other company that could use that data to tailor ads and to really focus those efforts on that particular group or demographic of people. And so there's a whole industry that's built around these marketing and analytics companies.
Right. And that makes sense. And you explained that really well. I'll throw out a buzzword here when I was, prepping for this podcast. Can any of this stuff be traced back to that whole net neutrality decision, or is this been going on for much longer than that?
Net neutrality is interesting because I would say sort of. I think net neutrality, when kind of the protections went away, I think it was like 2017. What's happened there is that has kind of opened up the door for ISPs and the large telecom providers to basically make their own rules around throttling, internet access and speeds and creating these kind of speed lanes there or lanes they've been talking about. The big concern was, could, AT&T just say, yep, you're no longer be able to use Netflix because they're a competitor. You're going to use our own streaming service, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it goes beyond that too, because it's now given, I think, a lot of companies more freedom to say, oh wow, now I could connect in with AT&T and maybe they can start targeting all of their users with my ads.
Mm-hmm.
So there is kind of a scary reality that might happen one day. The thing that's interesting I find with the net neutrality is that the states have all said, nope, that's not going to work for us.
Mm-hmm.
So they go back to the FCC and say, no, we don't like that. And so states like California have just like created their own net neutrality law
Right,
to
right.
supersede the federal. So that's why not a whole lot has really happened with that yet. But I think it's just another gateway now for advertisers, perhaps eventually, to start targeting you with more ads.
Okay. All right. So we're not done with this by any stretch, is what I'm
No,
hearing. Okay.
absolutely not. And unless Congress comes in and changes something with the FCC, net neutrality is pretty much dead unless the states do something about it.
Okay. It's somewhat recent news. Google made headlines saying that they were going to change up how they do their advertising, and I read a few of the articles and I thought, okay, well, this sounds like it's different, but in some ways it doesn't sound like it's different. Can you kind of explain to everybody what Google has said they're going to do?
Yes. This is a hot topic in the tech community recently. So we all know about tracking cookies, like cookies. I mean,
Hmm.
this cookies is, this dates back to when the internet was first designed. It was a government project called
Yeah.
DARPA,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it
Right.
was actually used after the Cold War. And now it became the internet that we know today. Well,
Hmm.
cookies were added on later because one of the big problems with the web at the time when it was really young was there was no way to track like states and sessions, right? When users log into an application, that just didn't exist. So cookies were basically the solution for that. So if you would look at the way that cookies are used now, it's like a whole other world. So we
Hmm.
basically added on all these features and functions to cookies where they've really become kind of a privacy issue, where like we mentioned, third parties are using them. Everybody's using cookies, and now there's all these cookie blockers, and there's tools to help you control your cookies, and all these things. So Google has proposed a solution. Well, of course, they call it a solution
Right.
called FLoC, which stands for Federated Learning of Cohorts.
Yeah, that doesn't
So
sound scary at all, does it?
I know, right? Like, could they come up with a better name? I don't know.
I
That's
don't
kind of
know. Is
weird.
Skeletor ahead of the flock committee?
Yeah, right. But it's basically how they designed this is instead of issuing cookies out to everybody in every browser, this is groups people into their browsing habits using kind of a unique identifier, and you're part of now a group. So your demographics, your male, you're in your 40s, all these things can now be put into this unique group with others. So then when advertisers need to get information about, you know, these demographics, you're not giving out, details like your IP address, your location, and all these other things. You're now part of this federated cohort, as they like to call it, which that ID then is given out to the company of the sites that you're browsing to. Now that sounds all well and good, but this is all still being developed. And there's actually company or organizations like the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, that have actually come out and said, this is actually not the best idea because it's actually going to give advertisers now access to new information, things that we haven't been able to do with cookies because the technology with cookies is kind of limited. But
Hmm.
now we're going to be opening up a whole new set of doors for these advertisers because this working group that Google put together to kind of build this new system is all just advertising companies. And they're all agreeing to this is the type of data that we want. And this is how we're going to do it. And it's really all under the guise of being more private, when in reality, it's just going to be another gateway for them
Hmm.
to get more information out about you. So more to come on
Right.
that.
Right. Okay. So the doctor tells you you're sick, but the doctor also is the one who sells you the pills to fix you.
That's right. That's
Okay.
how it
Got
works.
it.
So
I got it.
yeah, but the good news is that cookies are not going away like anytime soon. Google is just testing this out. The standard around this is still very much in its early stage, so it's not like this is going to come out tomorrow and change everything in the way that we use the web. But this is something that I think, at least especially me in the privacy and cybersecurity community, we are greatly concerned. And hopefully we can have more influence to make sure any new technology like this is going to keep people's privacy in mind.
Gotcha. All right. So, what are some tips that the people listening to this podcast who are like me, who are just like the average computer user, what is it that we can do to try to take back some of our privacy?
Really, the first thing you can do is what web browser you use.
Okay.
And so I'm a big proponent of Firefox, both the web and the mobile version. So because thinking about what you use the most, you're using your phone, you're using a desktop computer. I always recommend changing those over to Firefox, and really it's for one reason only. They probably have the best privacy protection that's built into their browsers. They have something called enhanced protection, which has some great things like automatically blocking those third-party tracking cookies that we just talked about,
Mhm.
and also preventing a lot of that fingerprinting, which I also mentioned, just by default. So just by turning that on, you're actually helping keep yourself a little more private than you were by using just some, Chrome or another web browser. That's already built in. The other thing I'll mention about Firefox is they have something I really like called Facebook Container. So if you
Okay.
use Facebook, it will actually kind of virtualize your Facebook usage. So cookies and other tracking things that Facebook uses can't escape that browser.
Oh, okay.
So
All
that's a
right.
real nice feature that I recommend people that if they're using Facebook, it helps prevent Facebook from getting those third-party pixels and tracking, things that they have out there with companies from coming back to your Facebook account.
Very cool. And so I feel smart because I use Firefox because I think you came on the show the first
I
time,
did.
and I asked you a question. I was like, okay, I'm going to Firefox now. There's DuckDuckGo has kind
Yeah.
of positioned itself as being like a more sterile Google. Is that somebody we could use as well?
Yes. I use DuckDuck. I actually use two search engines. I use DuckDuckGo and StartPage.
Hmm.
Both of those are, I'll call them privacy aware search engines. So the big difference with StartPage and DuckDuckGo is they don't use any of your data for advertising. In fact, they don't store or save any of your search history either, which is the complete opposite of Google. Google saves
Hmm.
everything. Every search correlates
Hmm.
everything that you do back to your Gmail and all the other Google services. DuckDuckGo in particular is really nice because it has a look and feel like Google. You get
Hmm.
very similar results, and they're very much about protecting your privacy. Highly recommend them.
Very cool. We're talking about, everything that we've searched for and getting pushed into demographics. I'm concerned, you know, with people who we'll just, I really thought long and hard about what was a good kind of example I could ask you about, but somebody who searches for depression and like a
Yeah.
solution for depression, how could that kind of tumble, you know, out of control on someone who's just maybe their neighbor said they had depression. So they care
Mhm.
about their neighbor. I want to learn more about depression. How do I help my neighbor? Can this inadvertently put them into a different category that they don't actually belong to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, there's I would say not only companies, but there's attackers out there that look for certain information that's being searched for. I don't know if you've noticed, if you ever go on Google, you search for a term, the first thing you see is a bunch of ad, links,
Hmm.
which they're
Hmm.
very carefully crafted for you to click on, even though in tiny text it says promoted or ad or something like that. If
Hmm.
someone is really kind of urgently searching for information, they're hoping that they're going to get you to click on that and kind of social engineer you a bit to take advantage of you. So there's absolutely people and companies that want you to search for certain topics so they can serve you certain ads or direct you a certain way. We've even seen, malware and other types of spyware that's installed in similar fashion by searching for certain keywords.
Gotcha. So what are you, I mean, your dad, what are you doing to coach your kids to, retain their privacy online?
That is a great question. So I have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. I'll say the 18-year-old
Fun
is pretty
ages.
much, well, the 18-year-old still lives in my house, so
Okay.
they still have my rules they have to follow until
Gotcha.
they're off to college. But it's been one of those things of constant education, and I look at it more of a partnership with my kids.
Hmm.
Right, I want them to know that they can come to me if they have something strange on their device or their phone, or they see something weird, or they hear about a kid talking about this app or whatever it is, that they can come to me, and they can trust me that I'm not going to berate them or yell at them for, coming to me to talk about these things. And so I've just kept the education going in my house about, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. These are the bad things that are out there that you need to be aware of, and to come to me if you see something strange. I remember, a couple of weeks ago, my son came up to me with a text message on his phone that said he won, an Amazon gift card, right?
Hmm.
Which is clearly a scam.
Right. Good for him for catching it.
Right. He caught it. He did the right thing. He told me about it. And, I educated him a bit. I said, yeah, these are scams that are out there. You did the right thing. You didn't click on it. And, tell your friends too. This
Hmm.
stuff is happening, and this
Right.
is how you should react to it.
Right. Yeah, and so it's not always something as obvious, I guess, as the is it the Nigerian prince who wants to, send you the money, just give me your
Yes.
bank account and I'll take care of it for you. Tom, it's interesting when I heard the teacher telling my son about, hey, everything you do online is going to be tracked. Well, you know what? He has always existed in the age of the internet. You and I, begrudgingly, I guess, are older than the internet. It
Yes.
was different for us. How is it, as we as parents who, you know, we had an analog childhood. How is it going to be different for our kids growing up in a completely digital childhood? And I know that's a huge question.
Whew. Yeah, it is a different world than when we grew up, like you said. I think as kids grow up and as technology keeps advancing, they need to be, more aware than I think even we are of the threats to their privacy and their cybersecurity. I think it's, only going to get worse. I mean, I hate saying that, but the way that I'm seeing, and I think everybody else is seeing technology evolve to, I mean, we're already having self-driving cars, and you think about the future, like what does 10 years from now look like? And I'm no futurist, but I can tell you that the way that technology is advancing, I mean, our kids are going to have to adapt to this somehow. And that's why one thing I think it's important to mention is, taking breaks from technology. Have you seen The Social Dilemma, that
I
movie on
have,
Netflix?
yes. You guys
Yeah.
talked about it on your podcast, and I went and I watched it.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we set ourselves limits and we teach our kids about limits with technology and social media, because it's so easy to fall down this rabbit hole and kind of escape from reality. And then that's all our reality becomes, is this, we're immersed in this technology, which is not good for us at all and not good for our health or our mental health. So I think we need to, in the future, kids really need to, as they grow up, learn ways to adapt and figure this out, set their own limits and use technology hopefully in a responsible way.
Very well put, sir. Man, I appreciate your time. As always, thank you for being on the show again. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me at sharedsecurity.net. That's the Shared Security Podcast. We're also on Twitter at SharedSec. And if you want to contact me directly, I'm also on Twitter as Agent0x0, or you can just send me an email at tom@sharedsecurity.net.
All right, man. Tom, I appreciate you for what you're doing. Thank you for being on the show again. Thank you for podcasting for 11 years, helping people like me try to live a little bit of a safer digital life, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Andy. It's been a pleasure.